Hello, everyone. This is Tim with the Online Big Blue, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. Oh, football season. We have been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally, we are getting some news and some action and some trades and some players being released. I mean, it's been a cornucopia of information this last weekend. But I had a conversation with a gentleman who has some inside knowledge of some of the goings on in East Rutherford, and I had a question for him because we were barbecuing, and I said, with everything going on right now, and with the new COVID CBA, as I like to refer to it as, how is Jason Garrett going to change his philosophy at all in installing this new offense for Daniel Jones? Now, the reason why I asked this question, because I found it very interesting if you take a look at the CBA agreement itself. So the players wanted a 3-week ramp-up period, but the NFL only offered 18 days. They settled on 21 days, almost 3 weeks, not quite. And what they're going to have to do is, with a couple of days in there, the teams will be allowed to be in padded practice. And we're going to get to that to a minute. So basically what they're saying is we're not necessarily going to see some real football for some time. It's probably going to be a couple weeks. And then you're going to see kind of like an OTA style practices with players just in helmets, kind of looking more like a passing camp. And then after a couple of weeks of that, and this is just to build up stamina and make sure you don't get injuries and learn the playbook and everything else. But after you get into that, you're finally going to get into pads. And of course, this is going to be important because there are no preseason games. And I said, okay, well, they'll have the padded practices. At least they can probably go not full speed, because they don't really go full speed like they used to do in the old days in the early 2000s. No, but they'll get some, simulated game experience for Daniel Jones on the offense. And then I took a look at another part of the CBA, and it said there will be 20 days of a ramp-up period and a maximum of 14 padded practices. So, how are teams going to install a new full offense with a total of a maximum of 14 padded practices? Now, that's interesting. I mean, you only have 14 days, or I shouldn't even say days, but you only have 14 practices in pads. The rest of the times you're in shorts and helmets, and it's really kind of like an OTA. And like I said before, it's like an OTA style, practice, or even like a passing camp. Well, now with Jason Garrett installing his, now like I said, we do not know exactly. He could be going towards a run-oriented offense for all we know. But if he's going to install an offense similar to the one that he ran as an offensive coordinator in Dallas, and we've done a video on this, it's going to be predicated on the Air Coryell offense, which is always predicated on movement and motion, and it allows the wide receivers to have almost 2 to 3 different routes that they can run at any time once they leave the line of scrimmage. With that type of offense, how are you going to implement that and get a full understanding of it with only maximum of 14 padded practices? I find that very interesting, because if you've ever gone to an NFL training camp, and if you've ever gone to an NFL training camp back in the early 2000s, I've been going since the 70s. But if you go back even to our younger folks, if you go back to the early 2000s, like around 2001, 2002, 2003, whatever, you had two-a-days in full pads. And a lot of times you really went at the offense. The defense went at the offense. I mean, it was almost like, it was an inter-squad scrimmage. I mean, you could literally get not game experience, but you could get experience in the offense against a live defense. And with only 14 padded practices, who is really good, and with the potential of you losing players not to injury but to illness, who's really going to go full? And like I said, they haven't gone full speed in years. They haven't. I remember training camp back in my day. I remember training camp back in the '80s. With Bill Parcells. I mean, I went to tons of them. Watching Lawrence Taylor and a rookie Carl Banks, and I remember a couple scuffles that William Roberts got into his rookie season in '86. I remember some of those that he got in with Jerome Sally and George Martin, not George Martin, but Jerome Sally, and I can't remember the other guy's name. But they went at it. They went at it in practice. Like I said, Parcells was a big proponent of training camp going full speed. Now, he still had them in full pads and practices, during the season itself. But he was, like I said, he thought it was quality to go full speed. And you got to remember, these are also the days that you used to sometimes would bring in another team and scrimmage against them, and they would do it with live refs. So how can we comfortably feel about putting in a complex offense that Daniel Jones needs to learn? And I've said it before, Daniel Jones is technically going to be in his third offense in 3 years, because he was in his offense at Duke, he was in the Pat Shurmur offense, and now he's in the Jason Garrett offense. So you're asking a lot from a rookie quarterback. Now, I assume that they are going to scale down the offense. And when I was talking to this gentleman at the barbecue, he said the same thing. He goes, I don't know exactly what they're going to run because they're kind of keeping everything tight-lipped. But he's saying, I assume that they are going to run a facsimile of the offense that Jason Garrett ran. He didn't run it, but that was Scott Linehan. I can't remember the kid's name. They used to show the kid on the TV like 15,000 times because it looks like he's 12 years old. He was the one that ran the offense with Jason Garrett in Dallas this last season. But he figured he would run more of a facsimile of that offense than they would going towards a Air Coryell offense. So, I mean, is that going to... I mean, I would particularly think that would probably be the best route to go, only because of the fact that you can only expect Daniel Jones to learn so much. And then the other problem is we're bringing in, we're technically also potentially we could have 3 open spots on the offensive line. Because we don't know what's going to happen with Nate Solder, if he's going to opt out because of the child's illness. We don't know if they're going to move Andrew Thomas to the other side. We don't know, Nick Gates, if he's going to take over one of the open positions. We don't know how Spencer Pulley is going to deal with center. We don't know if Shane Lemieux, or Matt Perret is going to go, or how they're going to adjust to life in the NFL. We're asking a lot from a team. Now you got to remember, defenses are always ahead of offenses early in the season. That's just the way it is because of the fact that a lot of offenses, or majority of offenses, are dealt with timing. Now the problem is, of course, with defenses, they can just tee off. So I'm thinking that between the conversation I had with the gentleman and what my thought process would be, we would probably get a watered down version of Jason Garrett's offense. Maybe a mixture of his last year in Dallas as a head coach and his first year as an offensive coordinator in Dallas. But I think we would have to get a watered down version of that for the first couple of weeks of the season. Because without training camp, it's going to be interesting to see the Giants implement a new system with the players they have, potentially a new offensive line, potentially some rookies at key backup positions at the wide receiver. I don't know. I mean, I personally think that Joe Judge and Jason Garrett are smart enough guys to figure this out. And I personally think that they will come up with a solution. But I think the solution right now is I think they're going to do a combo offense. I think they're going to go run heavy for the first, probably for the first 2-3 weeks. Just so they can, get Daniel Jones' feet wet, get the wide receivers to know the timing, to understand their routes. And then after that, start opening the offense more. And I think a lot of the NFL is going to go that way because, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see with a limited amount of padded practices how this is going to work out and what's the quality of football that we are going to get the first couple weeks of the season. I'm thinking XFL. The XFL was fun to watch, but it wasn't good football. And I'm thinking that's what we're going to get the first maybe 2-3 weeks of the first 2-3 weeks of the season. But it's going to be fun, and like I said, I think they can do it. I think they can put it together. I have the utmost confidence in the coaching staff, and we kind of just have to see what goes on for there. Now, if you want to drop us a note just to say hey, or send us an email about an idea of a video you would like us to do, please do so at onlinebigbblue@gmail.com. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at onlineBigBlue1. And again, this is Tim with Online Big Blue, bringing you the best in New York Giants sports talk and entertainment. And as always, if you can like, if you can subscribe, if you can ring that bell, you know what that means? That'd be awesome.